Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Cornelius. I am your host, Cornelius Patrick O'Sullivan, and this is a very, very special podcast. This is one I've been looking forward to this for since this podcast began. I have some regular listeners. I often record. I often talk to you in the Patreon, and one of the regular patrons is my dear Uncle Mike, and he has flown in from Texas, not especially for this podcast, but for my grandmother's 90th with the lovely Deb and Tanya, and we're making the dream come true of bringing him onto the podcast. But that is not his intro. But I just had to get that out in the first place because I don't know. I'm just full of absolute joy. I'm in the John Hume War Room. It is dishevelled. The table looks like my brain. It's scrambled. There's empty glasses all over the place. There's weed crumbs. There's fucking Rizlas on the table. There's bills. There's mayhem going on in the house here. And there's even cigarettes stuff up there that doesn't belong to me. That belongs to the only funny German. And calculators and scissors and mouses to indicate that there's stuff happening. Whether it's bringing me forward, I don't know. Sometimes I think it might be fucking pulling me back. But if I had to get rid of something there, probably the mouse, because the weed is going nowhere, and that is a fact. My emotions. I'm very emotional this week. I'm extremely emotional this week, and I'm feeling all the vibes to get a little bit woke. And like my guest this week now is probably one of the wokest people you'll ever meet. So he'll be putting me back in my box. But I'm so happy that this day has arrived, and that I'm sitting here in my own house with my uncle, and we're about to do our podcast. So without further ado, I'm going to bring this week's guest onto the stage. What can I say about him? He saved my life is all I could really say, if I'm being totally honest. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into it, and we're going to get into it deep. Welcome to the stage, the magical, the mystical, the extremely good-looking Caesar, the woman pleaser, Mike O'Sullivan.
Haven't heard that one in a while.
That was your nickname, wasn't it?
It's good. Caesar was the nickname, yeah. But it's good to be here, Con. I can't believe I'm in the John Hume War Room. For all you listeners out there that have wished you could get here, I'm actually here. And you know what? It looks like somebody set off a couple of grenades in here, so it's it's a fitting name. But it's a brilliant spot. Yeah. And we're having a beautiful day in Texas, in Killavullen.
In Killavullen.
Just outside the metropolis of Mallow.
That's it, brother. That's it. I collected you this morning, and we came over the Nagle Mountains, and we were up high. We stopped in the car, and we could see the Golden Vale. We could see the Galtee Mountains. We could see the Ballyhora Mountains. I've often talked about them on the podcast. And,
absolutely beautiful. Beautiful scenery.
Yeah. Yeah. From days of yore. Mike, I want to get into it. You're my uncle. What age are you?
61. 61 this year, but I just turned 60 in December.
So, yeah, okay. So, you're sweet 60. Have you ever been kissed? I'd say you have you?
I've had a few slobbery ones.
A few slobbery kisses. You're 60 years old. You're my uncle. I'm 46. So, you're 14 when I was born. And, even though you're my uncle, I always kind of felt like you were almost like an older brother, even though I never had a brother. Like, right. I don't have that uncle vibe off you like the way I have I kind of have that with Finbar, and I had it with Niall, where I felt they were my uncle, where I always felt that it was something slightly different with yourself. And we're going to get into it. But before we get into it, we got to get the dirty business of the trending topics out of the way, and you have made one request.
Trending topics with Cornelius Patrick O'Sullivan and his Uncle Mike.
Who's
getting a contact high at the moment. Because there's a wafting smell of the wacky
backy.
The Mary Jane.
Jesus, I don't know where you're getting that from anyway, Mike, because it wouldn't be from me.
As he fires it up again, as he sparks it up one more time.
Spark it up. Hashtag PGA Championship.
Yeah, I just this past weekend watched it, and
Who won?
it was Brooks Koepka, who's actually a live player. He's one of the guys that defected over to the Saudi tour, the live tour.
Oh, were they all in that tournament?
Well, the PGA has allowed the big guys to play in the four majors: the Masters, the PGA, the US Open, and the British Open. So the guys that did defect over to the live tour actually get exemptions to play on the big four, the four majors on the PGA tour, which is kind of a little bit off key. And my wife now would talk better about this because she absolutely hates the live tour. She calls them all a bunch of renegade bastards.
Yeah, they went for the money though, didn't they?
Oh, they did. So they got paid up front, and the work is a lot less. They don't have as many tournaments to play, and they only play 3-day tournaments instead of 4-day tournaments on the PGA. So, but they got, some of them got close to 100 million or more than that dollar just to sign up for them.
Jeez, it'd be hard to say no to that, don't Mike.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Do you know? What would you be getting if you were playing in the PGA Tour? If you were Rory now, like, you'd be well paid.
Yeah, you still come out 50 mil a year at least, I'd say.
And these guys were getting 100 just to sign on.
Just to sign on.
2 years pay. But like, so it's actually, is it bad for the game of golf so that the live guys won?
Well, actually, it isn't, but it makes for better viewing, and there's more controversy about it,
more drama,
a little bit of drama, which I don't mind it, because in my own opinion, I would say the more golf you can have with the big dogs playing, the better it is to watch anyway. Like.
Yeah, and I'm pretty ignorant with golf, but I have heard and watched a small bit about live. Are they purporting to try and change golf, then make it kind of shorter? Like they were saying that's going on for too long, and like try and make the games 2 hours long instead of 4 hour long.
Yes.
Is that some of their plans, something like that?
It is.
And traditionalists are obviously up in arms with that. Like.
Yeah, and that's in any sport. You've got the old school people who don't like any change, and you've got even like when they were purporting to do the Super League, in Europe for the soccer. In my mind, it was like, geez, I'd love to see Barcelona take on, Madrid or freaking any other. I think the more for the consumer, the average consumer, the more you can.
The better games.
The better games, the better it is. For the.
Well, like. I get that, and especially with GAA as well. If you look at like I'm a huge fan of Gaelic football, but there's like 3 good games every year, 2 semi-finals in the All-Ireland final.
Right.
So like you're looking at, there's 4. That's 4 teams, and you might be able to add in another maybe 2 or 4 more teams that are capable. You prefer to see them playing competitive matches all the time as opposed to like Cork playing fucking Waterford and beating them by 25 points. It's just it's silly. So I do get that point, but it's. That the Super League is all about it. Like I do think the Super League and the soccer would I think it would ruin the heart of what's left of the heart of soccer, because that is pure monetary. You and me were talking about Cowboys there beforehand, the Dallas Cowboys, and you were saying, because I was telling you I'm watching the documentary now, Hard Knocks, great, and I've only started and it's great, but you were saying how much is it to go to a Cowboys game now? You were breaking it down for me?
If you were taking a family of 4, we'd say you had two kids and yourself and a wife, you're probably going to drop $1,500, $2,000 just for the one game day. Parking alone is $100 just to park the car.
Yeah.
And then, you're talking 4 tickets, probably $250, $300 a pop. And then you got beer. If you have a beer or a bite to eat in there, you could drop another $100 on that easily. And then if you buy a hat or a jersey or some merchandise, it easily adds up. I'd say a $2,000 for a day out at a Cowboy game
match,
is probably the average these days.
Whereas I can go across to the field over there now for nothing and watch Tournafulla kick the shit out of Knocknagree, and there's no hot dogs, I suppose,
and get as much enjoyment out of it.
But like, I'm not knocking it because I was at that stadium. It's fantastic. But like, what I'm saying is sometimes sport the commercial side of sport kills the heart of it, and I think the heart is like, if you look at the Premier League, the way Leicester won the league a few years ago now, the way even Wrexham are coming up. I know it's true. Money's involved at all stages, but like sometimes it can kill the heart of it. But anyway, listen, we'll move on. Hashtag Ferrari.
Was that trending?
I was trending on Monday. Yeah.
Ferrari.
Today is Thursday.
I was flying on Monday, so I missed a lot of that.
What does Ferrari mean to you?
Of course, the horse and the Italian sports car.
Yeah. We come from car background, yourself and myself.
Yeah.
What's your abiding memory of cars when you think of the motor trade?
I was, as they say in the States, I was born under the hood, or born under the bonnet. I grew up washing cars and cleaning cars and moving them back and forth across, so I learned to drive at probably 8 years old.
Yeah.
But the cars to me are, it's a big legacy.
Yeah.
But it's sports cars, I guess, and I was a big watching the race, and NASCAR is a big sport in the States that I watch a lot.
Do you remember going to the NASCAR rally with me when we were in Texas?
I do. That was actually an F1 race.
What was the name of the girl driver that day?
Danica Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah.
She used to drive NASCAR as well, but she did both sports. She did open wheel, which is the Ferrari or the F1 style cars.
Yeah.
And she did the NASCAR as well.
Yeah.
GoDaddy was her sponsor, which is an internet. GoDaddy.
I remember watching that and thinking that I'd be bored, stiff. But we put on the earphones and we were able to hear what they were saying inside in the cockpit and stuff like that. It turned it into like almost a virtual reality gig for a finish. It was brilliant. And the last trending topic, Michael, is Greta Thunberg. She was trending on Monday when I was doing the notes for this podcast.
For God's sake.
I said, I know you're a big fan of Greta.
Greta Thunberg.
What's your opinion of Greta Thunberg? What she stands for? Are you down with that kind of stuff?
No. I think it's totally... Whoever put her out in front of the stage to wag her finger at all the world leaders should be brought up for child abuse. So what kind of a...
Controversial.
Yeah, but she... What kind of knowledge would she have in her brain? She's only 16 or 17 when they put her out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think her brain even fully formed at that point, so how is she... And then she's out there wagging her finger and...
I don't know, I think some of the points that she's making are, potentially have merit to them.
No, I'm done with all this activism class and the activist class.
Yeah.
I actually am so fed up with it.
Do you think activism works?
It doesn't work with me.
Mm.
I'm sure it works in some instances, but I actually think it does more harm than good. Because the minute I see somebody like that step up, I'm automatically on the back foot going, what the... I have absolutely no interest in a kid telling me.
Yeah, it is. I suppose that's a good point. I suppose, like, I would be on the Greta Thunberg side of things, definitely. But I am definitely not knowledgeable enough to debate the facts, so I won't. But that is one difficult thing, is when you're being lectured to by someone who is decades younger than you,
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move on. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this week's podcast, Mike, and I've got some questions that I want to ask you, and you can talk for as long or as little on them, and they're questions that I know that all our family are going to listen to this podcast. And what I've always said about conversations with Cornelius is I put it out for everybody to listen to, and I'm very lucky that people do listen to it, and very thankful to anyone who's a patron. But this is my digital diary, and what I envisage, when I'm long gone and when my kids are long gone, maybe my grandkids or my great grandkids might be curious on what life was like around here. They might be doing a school project. This is a time capsule for them.
Yeah, it's a fabulous platform for it. I've heard you talk about that before on the podcast.
Yeah. And I know you've been keen to get on it, and I know you get the whole thing, the way it flows. So with that, bearing all that in mind, you just be you, and I'll be me. And Yeah, so let's get into it. So so like, when were you, like, what year were you born? And I want you to describe your childhood up to adolescence. You know, I know you say you're 60, so what's that? What's 19?
Yeah, I was born in December 18th, 1962.
62.
And I was the fourth of 7 kids, so it was a large family. There was 4 boys and 3 girls. One of the boys is gone now, of course. My older brother Niall passed away a few years ago, but still got 3 brothers, 3 sisters, alive and kicking. Growing up, I was born in a small town in North Cork, Newmarket, same as your dad. And growing up was actually, it was a prominent family in the town, being the car dealership and so on and so forth. So we grew up with just about everything we wanted and didn't really need for anything.
Happy childhood?
Happy childhood, absolutely brilliant.
Loads of people to play with.
Yeah, to the local national school, and always had the best birthday parties because Nana was just
amazing,
top class at that.
Yeah.
And it was the golden ticket in town if you got invited to an O'Sullivan party. That was the golden ticket. You
were in.
You were in. Nobody turned down an invite to the O'Sullivan house.
Yeah. It was always kind of a bit of a party house, though, down through the years.
Oh, it was. That was always good for a sing-song and whatever occasion may be thrust upon us. We were there front and centre.
And you were in school, where did you come in the family?
Right in the middle, 3 above me and 3 below me.
So you're universally loved.
Yes, I was a middle child, I guess.
Yeah. And who did you look up to?
In the family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, well, your dad, John, was the older brother, so he was always the top dog.
Was he the top dog?
Yeah.
But like, you were... So it was like, is Finbark was closest then to your in age? Were you?
Niall would have been closest
Niall.
to me. We were only 1 year. We were like 13 months apart.
Yeah. Irish twins.
Yeah.
Nana and Granny.
And so we were kind of joined at the hip all through childhood.
Yeah.
So we'd get in trouble together. We'd get the accolades together, or we could get in trouble together.
Yeah.
But it was always together.
Always together. So Niall was kind of your main squeeze, so kind of, I suppose, right?
Well, your dad, John, was mad into the GAA, so we had a field beside our house, and we called it O'Sullivan Beara. And we used to have our own hurling matches up there with the other streets, the streets in the town.
Yeah.
And each street had a team. And we'd have tournaments in O'Sullivan Beara, and your dad would be up in a tree with a 70s tape recorder and a microphone narrating the game.
Fuck
And
off.
here's Mike O'Sullivan with the hurling on. He's under 45. Yes, he takes a shot. Oh, it's gone wide. What a dipshit. But he was up there, and he'd have it taped on the cassette tapes, and we'd listen back to it.
Go away.
Oh yeah,
I never knew that now, man.
Sure, he's still the same. He's a GA man through and through.
He is.
But yeah, I remember the tree. I can see him sitting in the tree now.
Oh, Jesus. That's
with his
lovely.
tape recorder.
And what would the girls be doing while this is going on? Carmel and Colette and Caroline?
You know what? I've no idea. In the house playing with dolls or something.
I was playing with dolls. Do you hear that now, lads? So my next question was how many brothers and sisters? Yeah, but you've just basically answered that question. So what was your education like? What was education like in national school, and then where did you go secondary school?
National school was just pretty much, what is it, babies, high infants, all the way through 12th class. In the same school, same teacher every day.
Did you like school?
I was okay with it. I mean, my favourite things were math.
Yeah.
Or maths, as you say over here. I guess we just...
Sums.
Sums. And geography and history kind of were things I gravitated towards. To the worst I was with languages. Even the English language I had trouble with. But Irish, especially, I could never get a grasp of. My worst subject all the way through secondary school and Coleman's College and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you went to Coleman's.
I went to Coleman's for...
I went to Coleman's. My dad went to Coleman's. My uncle Jimmy went to Coleman's. And then yourself and Niall then.
Niall.
How did you get on?
We weren't.
Sorry, what?
We weren't in the best of.
You did the full term though, did you?
No, not at all.
Didn't you know?
We barely got through 2 years.
And what happened? You got asked to leave or something?
But the first night we were going back that I was starting, my very first night, we were going over on a Sunday from Newmarket to Fermoy. And Niall would have been starting his second year, and it would have been my first year. But it was the very first trip for me, you know, to go to the where you check in, and we had a bad car accident on the way just outside Newmarket.
Did you?
Head-on collision. And it delayed my start in Coleman's for about 2-3 months. And Niall actually missed a whole year, so he had to go back. So we ended up in second year in the same class.
Oh, right.
Fermoy. We were actually in the same classroom.
Oh, that's cool.
And we also were brothers, so we had one of the door. We had our own room, you know, instead they would call them cells.
Cells.
And there's a reason for that, because it was a fucking jail.
I fucking remember it, man. I was in a cell myself. I did 5 years boarding there. I've never done a podcast on Coleman's. I definitely want to do one. But talk to me about your experience in Coleman's. I'm fascinated about that now.
Coleman's is an all-boys boarding school where you went for 3 weeks at a time, and you got home every third weekend, just for the weekend.
Yeah.
Mom would pick up on Friday, and Dad would drive back on Sunday night.
And you would just eat for the whole weekend.
That was it. That's what you did. You came home and Mom had your favourite food there, and you just, that's all you did was eat.
Oh my God. Because when I did Coleman's, only in first year, it was 3 weeks. And then they changed it to 2 weeks until I was in third year. And then by the time I was doing my leaving cert, you could go home every weekend. And it wasn't too bad.
Oh.
But I remember being in first year and staying in there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And just being ravenous all the time, just starving.
Which the food was rationed. It was like, Oliver, can I have more, please? No.
Yeah, no, you can't.
I mean, the breakfast. I remember the breakfast. If you got Weetabix, you got one brick of Weetabix.
Yeah. And you have to run down to get bread. If you were fast, you'd get bread in our and if you were small, your bread could be just taken off you by someone that's a couple of years ahead of you. So what were you doing? The fact that you were asked not to come back, the shame of the O'Sullivans upon us, two pricks.
Yeah, we were, the 70s was a very violent time for teenagers. For growing up as a teenager, it was the height of headbanging rock and roll was on, and the boot boy phase, and punk rock was starting to make inroads. And
you were at the heart of that shit.
We were at the heart of that shit. And the hassle, through Coleman's, I'm sure I saw some of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life. It was prison yard stuff.
Down the lowers?
Down the lowers, and even in the, that bathroom that was in between the old building and the new building, and it was kind of open at the top. It was not enclosed.
Yeah.
It was open air type stuff. And the scraps that went down up there were unbelievable.
Do you know, Mike, I swear to God, when it had changed by the time I got to leaving cert, but first and second year were violent. And I'd say, you'd always hear stories from the leaving cert about what it was like for them when they were in first year. So you kind of had a decade of a thing going on. And then, listening to you and listening to my dad, it was a violent place.
Oh, it was.
You had to have your wits about you.
To survive, you had to fight to survive.
You did, I remember I had 3 fights, 3 scraps in Coleman's, but they all took place before I was in junior cert. And it kind of, I don't know, they just kind of clamped down on it, but first year it was grim, man. So were you fighting a lot, you and Niall?
Yeah, well, I had it better than Niall because I had a big brother there, and the guys in my class knew I had a big brother, so that was kind of a no-go area.
And Niall wasn't shy coming forward either, so they'd be like, we better leave Mike alone.
Yes, yes, he was a security blanket for me.
Yeah. So you probably the fucking cheeky mouth, and you saw.
I probably was instigating a lot of crap. But we did have trouble with the townies. You had the day students that came from town up. And
day boys, we used to call them.
The day boys, yeah. And anyways, we got in some trouble with the day boys. And, they have to have those plays at the end of the year. They do operas or something.
Yeah.
We were involved in a few of those. But I guess the day boys and their buddies from town got tickets, and they came up and they were looking specifically for Niall and myself up from town. And, of course, it got out, because they caused a bit of a ruckus, and there was a bit of a free for all in the arena or whatever it was.
you were doing a play, the end of year play. Like I did these as well in Coleman.
Yeah, I did
like
the
these are
Mikado,
artistic now. Like
Gilbert
the
O'Sullivan
Mikado.
stuff, Mikado, and the gondoliers we did.
Right, and the day boys came in because you had been obviously antagonising them.
Right.
And a scrap happened at the Mikado.
Right.
Is that the reason why you were asked not to go
yes,
back?
Yes, that was one of the big reasons because they put their investigators on it. They went through all the files and figured out it was the O'Sullivans that were the reason that these fuckers came up and disrupted the occasion.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
So then after that, I went to Boherbue Comprehensive School, which is it was a day school.
That suited you better.
Yes. And it was there was a couple other guys that I met back there who went to different, like similar St. Coleman's College. There was a couple other ones around LaSalle and there was a couple of guys that got kicked out of their ones, and we were very similar. So it was kind of like
Boherbue was for the fucking
all the misfits got put.
It was kind of like a jail.
Yeah,
like it was like you're going to get, if you don't behave yourself, you're going to Boherbue.
We're in the halfway house. In
the halfway house is what it was. And you did you finish your education, or didn't you dropped out? Didn't you go working or something?
Did the Inter-Cert, as it was called back then, which is it's a different name now, I believe.
Yeah, it's the Junior Cert.
Junior Cert.
Pile of shit.
And then I did the fourth year after that, but I didn't go through fifth. Didn't go through Leaving Cert.
Yeah. Did you go working?
I went working for the family business, the car dealership.
So at the time, were we main dealers? Were we Nissan main dealers then? Datsun?
Yeah, Datsun at the time.
Yeah. So Datsun. So just for context there for any listeners, my grandfather, God rest his soul, had a garage, and they were a main dealer for Datsun, which turned into Nissan. And then eventually we went to Rover, and then we did Citroen and Mitsubishi and a few bits and pieces like that. But it was kept going for years afterwards. But it was really in its heyday then, though, wasn't it?
It was, in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And you know how it started? It started with my granddad, which
Jack.
is Jack. It was Jack Sullivan, which he started back in the horse and cart days.
Talk to us about that.
He used to service or build the carts, because they had proper axles on them and wheels. And you just have the cart sitting on top of that and the horse pulling it in the front.
Yeah.
But that's how we evolved into a car business.
From the horse and cart.
From the horse and cart. And up the back of the garage, there's a bunch of outhouses kind of thing. There actually used to be stables for the horses, but they became catch-alls.
I fucking remember
catch-alls for
for
the
parts,
spare parts and second-hand parts.
Is that what they were for?
They were horse stables back in the day.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's all gone now. All that's all cleared out.
Oh,
But I remember those, and I remember going up playing hide and seek as a kid, and the washing line was on the side, over by the left, and they were stables.
They were horse stables for the
fucking hell.
While the carts were in for service or in for greasing or whatever.
So then Jack had our granddad, and then he went to Newmarket.
Then during the war, after the war, WW2, there was a taxi service, a hackney service in Newmarket, one car for the whole, Duhallow region, I guess. And we became the service garage for that one car. And then it went from horse and car to the 1940s type car, and then evolved into a Ford dealership where we did, Anglias and freaking Escorts and Cortinas and all that stuff back then. Excuse me.
Am I blowing smoke into your face there now? I didn't mean to do that. But I never factored in the evolution of how it went. And it's very fast. That's fascinating. And then the 70s, as you said, the late 70s and the early 80s, the garage grew to be a main dealership, and was, with some renown around the area, would have been very, Nana and Grandad would have been very respected pillars of the community.
Yes.
And big family in town, and
all of us kind of worked in the car shop. I migrated towards the spare parts, the stores department, or the parts department, I guess, or whatever it was.
You all kind of had different departments.
And
then
the warranty, I did a lot of the warranty work.
I remember Niall driving transporter.
Yes, you had the car transporter, 5-car transporter that he drove up and down to Dublin a lot.
Yeah.
Picking up cars. And he used to do it for other dealers as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Your excuse, man. Your excuse. So what was that like? So you're working there, you're after leaving school, you're gone into the garage, which is a very normal thing to do at that time as well.
Oh, yeah.
People just left and went into family businesses all the time. It was like, and you were in there. When did you kind of think, I want to get out of this fucking small town?
Well, I always grew up with a fascination for the States. Because, in the 70s, you had all the cop shows, or, the Mannix and Hawaii Five-0 and
Yeah.
Simon and Simon and all the... And I had a fascination with the American cars too, because we always got the books where you could flip through the pages and you'd see the Oldsmobiles and the Cadillacs and the Chryslers, and
Yeah.
they were just...
Of course, we'd see all those as well with
It
the
was
manuals.
fantasy world for me,
Yeah. So there was a niche at the back of your
There was.
brain. And when did you decide? What made you decide? Fuck, I'm going to do this.
Well, I had a friend I went to school with. His name was Walter Ehlert, and they were Canadians, but they had come back to Ireland. And I went to school with him for a couple of years. And after Boherbue, he went to Canada for a year, just to go back. And he went back to work. And when he came back in 1980, I'd said I was 1980. He was trying to talk me into going with him to Canada.
Yeah.
And I kind of said, why not? So I went and got my passport and all the papers taken care of. And then in the interim, his dad had bought a newsagent store in Buttevant.
Oh,
And
I know it.
And wanted Walter to be part of it or run it. So that kind of fell through with our plans of going back to Canada. But I had the itch, I had the bug at this point.
Yeah.
And I was talking with another friend, Derry Graney, who's Agnes was Niall's wife.
Yeah.
Derry was Agnes's brother.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, but I don't want to go to Canada. I said, I don't care. Where do you want to go? The States. And I said, that's where I want to go in the first place. So let's do it. And he got his papers sorted out. And
was it easy? Was it easy to get the paper sorted out back then?
It wasn't that difficult. I don't remember any.
But did you just go over, you were kind of a bit of a bowl boy, were you? You didn't go over with a proper visa, you just...
No, I had a proper 6-month
had you?
vacation visa, and I had a stamp and the whole visa thing on the passport and the whole lot.
But you didn't come back after the 6 months?
No, I overstayed my visa.
By
So I became an illegal alien, I guess, at one point for a while.
But we'll get to that. I want to ask you, this is the last question of before you left Newmarket now, before you left Ireland, and we'll get on to the state side of the podcast then. The night before you went, can you remember saying it to can you remember when you told Grandad that you weren't? Because I'd imagine that he would have had plans for you and, the family business, and it was all going well, and I think that's a natural kind of thing. Was he disappointed?
No, and he knew well before the last day, but he actually was encouraging, because most of his generation had gone to the States, and he was the one who was left at home, and so he was very encouraging about going to it, and he wanted me to more or less call him every day and tell him what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. He was living it through me, he wanted to
go away.
Oh yeah, he loved the States. He had a real soft spot for and the cars and the stuff. And
yeah. And would you ring home often when you went over?
Back then you only landline, so
yeah,
and it was a hefty charge,
yeah.
So a lot of it was reverse the charges, all right, or collect calls, as I say.
Yeah.
But it would only be, I'd say, once every couple of months, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe even more than that.
The saying goodbye to your brothers and sisters, did you think you were only going for 6 months, or did you know at the back of your head, I'm never coming back here?
It's kind of around now, but, like your dad's generation, a bunch of his guy buddies left and went to the States and never came back. And it was always puzzling to me that, because Newmarket was to me, Newmarket and Ireland were synonymous. Newmarket was Ireland, Ireland was Newmarket.
Yeah.
The way you're in the kids' eyes, you're thinking that that's the whole world, and there was no difference between the words.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand how these guys that went to the States and never came home.
Why wouldn't you come home to the market,
And why would, yes, exactly. Why you're missing all the crack.
Go to Scans, have a few pints.
And then I suddenly was 4 years in the States going, geez, I am one of those people.
Yeah.
I have become one of those people.
Yeah.
Never came back.
Yeah. And Yeah, so we're kind of halfway through now. If you want to take a break, we can take a break. Or if you're happy to motor on.
Before I got on the plane, and just to finish that one up, Dad took me and Derry Graney down to the Shannon Airport, and we stopped at Dirty Nelly's and had a pint at 10 o'clock in the morning, which set up my next 40 years in the States of having pints at 10 o'clock in the morning.
My dad taught me this.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it only makes sense.